Hello, everybody. It's Gary Fenton. We're excited to welcome everyone to LRF's first handicapping webinar. You can only hear us. We can't hear you, but there is a space on the right to ask any questions, and I'll do my best to answer them while Christina is going through her analysis of the races. If we don't get to it, just email me afterwards, and either I or Christina will get back to you. Before we bring on our expert, I want to thank our friends at Equibase for helping put this together. They created a product called Stats Racelens, which is a valuable handicapping tool. We recommend you checking it out. I use it, Christina uses it. It's a powerful resource, and we will discuss it today during the webinar. Before we bring in our expert, I wanted to give a quick bio. Christina has been an on-air host at TVG and the former HRTV since 2004. She grew up in horse racing, literally. She was born at the hospital across the street from Santa Anita. Her mom scheduled a C-section on a Tuesday, a dark day. So her father, jockey Frank Oliveris, could be there. When people say they grew up at the racetrack, Christina literally has been there since day one. I met her back in 2004, and she is not only one of the best handicappers in the game, I'm proud to call her a good friend and great ambassador to the sport. So without further ado, Christina Blacker.
Thank you very much, Gary. It's good to be with you guys today, and for everyone at Literate Feather for logging on and taking some time to listen in. I appreciate your time on what I'm sure is a busy work day and an exciting day as we are in advance of this year's Preakness. So what I'm going to do today is just show you a little bit about how I tackle the racing form, how I come to my conclusions, make my selections, put together tickets. And as Gary said, if you have any questions, feel free to ask those. He's going to chime in as well if there's anything that I might miss and he thinks might be something that's on your all's minds as well. And then at the very end, I will put together a ticket, and I will just be available throughout the day today if you have any lingering questions or anything else that you sort of want to talk about with regard to this card. On Saturday, we can compile all that in an email from Gary, and I'll be kind of going back and forth with you guys throughout the afternoon. So I'll show you first just what I use. I'll give you a very brief overview. As Gary said, Stats Racelens is a product that I have started using in the last about year and a half, and it's very sophisticated, and it's something that is as in-depth as you want it to be. But it's also a product that I think everybody can use just in terms of some of the real basics. So I'm going to show you that today just so that it's not too overwhelming. So this is the basic Stats Racelens page. I also use Thorograph quite a bit. These are the Thorograph race shapes, and we will go back and forth between these screens throughout the webinar today. I use the race shapes quite a bit when I'm trying to determine early speed and just who is the fastest. For example, this is race 10. It's a mile and a 16th turf race. You can see who is the quickest horse early on in there. That's in flexibility. But when it comes to sort of the 5 furlong turf sprints, like this race here, which we will start with in a minute, I find this very useful. I also use Thorograph just in terms of their basic speed figures. And I'm going to scroll back to race 9 because that's where we're going to start today. The important thing to remember about Thorograph, and this is similar if you use the Ragozin sheets or anything else, the lower the number, the better the score. And you also want to look for a horse that is showing an improving pattern. And I'll show you that throughout the day today too, just the curvature of how this pattern is going along. You can see a horse that is getting better at this point, a horse that is maybe slowing down at this stage. And then I'm going to use the racing form quite a bit because I think that is what most of you are probably comfortable with. That's sort of my home base when I'm handicapping. Everything that I do, whether it be Thorograph or Stats, I end up copying all this information onto the racing form, and then that's kind of my main tool that I use when I'm at the racetrack or on the air at TVG. So we'll start here with race 9. We're going to go through 5 races today. It is, as you can see at the top here, the start of $1 million guaranteed late pick 5 on Saturday. So I'll put together a ticket for you as a template to use for yourself if you'd like. And so the very one is the 5 furlong turf sprint, fillies and mares, 3 years old and up. And I think that's important to note because there is a 3-year-old in this field taking on older horses. And forgive me, the past position or the post position numbers aren't up here just because we had to download this so early, as we're still a couple days away. So Jojo Eyre is going to be the number 6 horse. She is a 3-year-old taking on older. She's very talented, but I think that is something that you just kind of take note of when you first look at these conditions. I scroll through and see, are there any 3-year-olds, and doing it, I need to bear that in mind as I'm going through my handicapping. So we'll start first at Not in Jeopardy, the inside horse. She is quick, but I'm not sure that she's fast enough for this group, especially drawing that inside post. She's coming out of a mile race. She is stepping up in class off of these optional claiming races. And as far as thoroughgraph goes, I've already consulted this. This race right here, she earned a 9 for that 74 Buyer Speed Figure third place effort. So we'll see if that's going to be fast enough to make her competitive with this group. The 2-horse Dare to Be, she's 1 for 1 at Pimlico. I like that about her, but her last couple of races leave a little bit to be desired. Just not quite sure, again, that she's going to be one of those that can compete in here. Ion Berlin is taking a big step up in class. This mare, although she's an 8-time winner, and she is 1 for 1 over the turf at Pimlico, she's running second off the layoff. All of those are very good angles, but these races that she is coming out of are just not going to be quite enough to compete against the stakes competition. The 4 Super Echo is the first horse I was really kind of intrigued by in this field. I'll look at her lifetime record. She's very honest. She's very consistent. She's 2 for 3 at the distance, and we're talking about a 5 furlong sprint. So that is the specialty distance, a specialist distance, and I want to find a horse that does well in this circumstance. And then looking at her thoroughgraph, that last race, I'll scroll ahead to Super Echo here. She earned a 6 for that. And so that is something that is going to stand out a little bit in this field and make her a competitor. So what I would usually do myself is just go ahead and write that in on the racing form, or write that in on my iPad so I can hold on to that number and keep an eye on that. And I also see that she actually hasn't had much chance to turf sprint. She's been on the main track a lot, but her few turf sprints are good. She's got a win right here. She debuted at Saratoga for maiden 40. Any race at Saratoga is going to be a tough one to win. So she's one that I'm kind of going to hold on to and just keep in mind that with regard to this race. The next horse does come in second off the break. The first start stateside wasn't a whole lot to make note of. I will show you some replays later, but I did watch this replay. There's just really nothing there. She didn't have the pace to keep up with these horses at the 5 furlongs, and she didn't have a whole lot to finish with. So now we come to our 3-year-old. This is Jojo Eyre. Johnny Velasquez will be aboard for Wesley Ward. She has a strong lifetime record. She is fast early on. You note that from the race shape via thoroughgraph as well. I showed you those race shapes. So here we are. Jojo Eyre has some quickness about her. You know, these numbers are basically an average of the early quarters for all the horses that are competing in the field. So while she's a little bit behind some of the others, you know, we're dealing with fractions, hundredths of a second that she's going to be behind some of these other horses. So she does have sort of the tactical speed to be effective there. And then as far as her thoroughgraph figure goes, she earned an 8 for this race right here. So not quite as fast as what we saw from Super Echo, but quick enough, and only 2 points behind. That does put her definitely in the conversation there. Angel at War is a horse.
Christina, can I ask you a question before you move on? Do you factor the sprint aspect of this race as opposed to a longer distance for a 3-year-old going against older? Is it easier for a 3-year-old in a sprint race as opposed to a route?
I don't really factor that in, no, myself. I mean, I'm not sure if some other handicappers do, but for me, it's really about comparing apples to apples, oranges to oranges. If she's coming out of some sprint races and she's competitive and showing the numbers that compete with the other, horses that are sprinting that in that realm, then I give her a chance. If she were to be coming out of some route races herself and wasn't, a turf sprinter, which is what we see from her, that's exactly what Wesley Ward has done with her the whole time, then I might be a little bit concerned about her just sort of trying something different, but no, not in that respect. I also just sort of a little bit of inside information here. Mrs. Charlie O'Connor listed as the owner. That kind of jumped out at me because Charlie O'Connor is one of the head honchos at Coolmore at Ashford Stud in Lexington, Kentucky. So any horse that the O'Connors are involved in, they're going to have a little bit of ability. He's probably kept his eye on this filly. She's a daughter of the late Scat Daddy who stood there before his passing. I just think they probably had some very high expectations for her. And you look at that last race, I think she's starting to realize it. They've had to take their time with her a little bit. She's running second off the layoff for the first time in quite a while on Saturday. And so I think all of that bodes well for her. I'll skip ahead to the 8 horse, Mr. Cornea, the English bred for the Doherty Barn. She has a strong lifetime record herself, and she's kept really good company. I'm looking through some of her past past performances here, and I see Morticia. So this is one of those instances where I think Stats Race Lens can be very helpful for you at home if you are not as familiar with the product. So I'm going to go into the past performances for this race. I will jump ahead because she is the number 8. We'll find her, and then we'll pull up the chart from that race 2 back. So here we are, the race 2 back, where she runs behind Morticia. That was the name that it's already italicized. It tells you that you're dealing with a next out winner there, so you know that this is a horse that is going to flatter her form in general. And then you can just as easily see, yes, she won her next start. All you have to do is kind of put your mouse over and highlight there. You can see that this horse won the next start. But if I want to look at Morticia a little bit more in depth and get a stronger line on her, her past performances are right there as well. And this is one of the fastest turf sprinting mares that we have right now. I mean, you can just see all of these victories for her. So for me, the fact that the 8 comes out of a race against such strong company, this really, really flatters her form. I'm going to give a very strong look to the 8 horse in this group. I will go back to the past performances on the racing form here. So we had just one more horse, Wild About Star to the outside. It's a tough outside draw for her. She's coming out of some state bred races, and although she tries pretty hard, I'm not sure that she is really up to the task of taking on, these open horses, at least as far as a win candidate goes. And so there's one more thing on stats just regard to the turf sprints that I wanted to show you guys. And this is something that I consult pretty often, but I always look in the turf sprints. I go to the True Odds page. True Odds, they give you an idea of where Stats thinks that the True Odds should be at post time, but they also give you some other information that I find intriguing. This here talks a little bit about early pace. They tell you who they think is going to make the early lead. So they're telling you that the 6, Jojo Eyre, that's the 3-year-old, is going to be involved early. They say that she'll be right there and maybe have some company with the 8 and the 9 late. And they give her a pretty big chance as far as the win percentage goes today. The last thing that I mentioned was that late pace. So I'm going to come over to this chart here. I'll select the late pace, and this is going to tell you who finishes their races the fastest. And it puts the 8 right on top. She's finishing pretty quickly in each and every one of her starts. And as I touched on, the fact that she's keeping what I think is the best company of some of the other horses in here, this is really strong with regard to her chances. They give Wild About Star, even though she is coming out of those state bred races, a good shot. And then Jojo Eyre, the 3-year-old, she has a shot as well. So I'll go back to the racing form. So for me, you can kind of read between the lines. It's boiled down to the 6, the 8, and the 9 for me. Jojo Eyre is the 3-year-old. The 8, Mr. Cornea, is the 5-year-old with that strong Morticia form. She comes out of a yielding turf effort, which I won't hold against her in the license fee, and then the outside Wild About Star. So I ultimately, with this race, ended up going 8, 6, 9. Those would be my top selections for the very one. I think the 3-year-old is going to run a very good race, but I think that the experience and the competition that the 8 has been keeping give her a little bit of an edge for me. So Gary, I'll throw it to you just in case you had any other questions or any horses in this field that you wanted to point out.
No, I think that's a very, very great analysis. The 6, 8, and 9 certainly on the page, and what they've done in the past show that they look to be the 3 best horses in the race. I'm more of a long shot player, so I kind of like the 1 a little bit. I'm also a big player of 4-year-olds. I think 4-year-olds are in the prime of their career and generally jump up a little bit more than other horses. And the 1 is making the second start as a 4-year-old and going back to a sprint distance. Ran that 8 at a mile, and I think if we can improve upon that a little bit, she fits in with these, and you're going to get the odds to play it. So that's where I would lean, but I'm more of a long shot player.
I love the 4-year-old angle. I go to that quite a bit, and I'm actually going to touch on that a little bit throughout the other races. So we'll jump ahead to race number 10. That's the Gallaret. We're at a mile and a 16th.
Christina, can I ask you one question before you move on? As you're putting together a Pick 5 ticket, would you then, I guess it depends on where you're sitting the other ways, but for now, these 3 would be in your first draft. 6, 8.
Those 3 would definitely be there. 6, 8, and 9 would be on the ticket for me. And it just depends. It's a big day, so you might play a bigger ticket than usual. Generally at TVG, we try to keep everything between like a $30, $60 range for these tickets, but on the bigger days, you open the wallet a little bit more because you're playing into that $1 million guarantee. There's a lot of attention coming off the Derby. There's going to be plenty of attention on Preakness Day. So I think the pools will be very, very strong come Saturday. So here for the Gallery, I'm So Fancy will be the first horse. This is an intriguing horse. This mare, Honor de la Cour trains. Florent Giroux will be aboard. These are two of the stronger turf connections that you're going to find in the game. I'll consult her thoroughgraph figures for that race, and she's rated about a 5, a 5, and a 4 recently. You'll see that that's going to kind of put her in the conversation. She gets Lasix for the first time, and if you wanted to, so these replays are going to be kind of hard to find, but what I generally will do is just start going to YouTube and kind of searching the names of all of these stakes races, and if you can get a line on just what she looks like, how she finishes, that gives you a bit more to work with in terms of your basis of knowledge for her. Inflexibility.
Christina, before you move on, can I ask you a question about I'm So Fancy? Do you think there's anything odd in the past performances here? Ran at the Curragh in September as a 4-year-old, and now a big stable, big outfit coming back as a 5-year-old. They didn't choose to breed the horse, retire the horse. I don't know if where the horse has been the last few months. It seems like an interesting move to bring this kind of a horse back who's a Greatest Stakes winner for a 5-year-old year, unless they really felt that there was more on the table.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The last sentence there, that, they think that she has more to give if they are going to bring her back. I think when you're dealing with a barn like this that does so well with horses, you can see just right there, first time with trainer, 21%, first time in North America, 14%. Arnold de la Cour really knows what he's doing, and he knows what he's doing just because he doesn't rush these horses. So perhaps they were hoping to get her to the races sooner. I'm sure they were if you bought her, September of last year. But I like the fact that they don't rush her. I like the fact that she's had that time. She's been with him at Tampa through the winter. That's where he spends a lot of his time and has been able to keep an eye on her, then back up to Fairhill. And now here she is, ready to compete on the big stage. So the only concern I would have is the recency angle. You think of who she's facing this afternoon or on Saturday, and she's catching a pretty sharp field. So she will have to be 100% fit to compete, but I give her a big chance. And she's one of those that you'll see at the end, when I put together a ticket, she's going to be a horse that if I have the budget, I'll want to use her. If my ticket is starting to get a little too expensive, because she doesn't have a recent race, she'll probably be one of the ones that I end up having to leave off, and that would be a reluctant choice. Inflexibility is the 2 for Chad Brown, Javier Castellano, Clarovich Stables. I mean, these are some of the strongest connections in the game, especially when you're coming and talking about turf stakes races. But she also has been off for a while, so bear that in mind. We haven't seen her in competition since October 21st of last year. I look back through here, though, in these running lines that she has, because it seems like she started to tail off a little bit at this stage, and that's when she went to the sidelines. This is more of an indicator, I think, of her true ability, and she's just had the bad luck of running into her stablemate. She wins this race here. She's second to a Raving Beauty, another horse Chad Brown has. She's second to Santa Monica, another horse Chad Brown has. She's 5th, beaten 2 to Sister Charlie, another horse out of Chad Brown's barn, and that's in a grade 1. If she is ready, and Chad Brown at 29% off the break, I think she is one of the horses that you have to really take a second and third look at in here. I have confidence in this barn, in this circumstance, and I can see looking back in her form, and I'll tell you her thoroughgraph numbers in here. She ran a 4, a 4, and a 5 in those races. She is definitely capable and a win candidate in this group. Over to the next page here. The Way I Am is an improving 4-year-old. Gary, that's kind of the angle that you were talking about. I think if you look, back here, you can draw a line through the Lake Placid. She clearly has a lot of ability. She was second to Athena in the grade 1 Belmont Oaks Invitational. That, I think, was the strongest field assembled for 3-year-old fillies on the turf course last year, and it should be with that purse over $1 million. So with her, as she comes back, she was second here in the return race at Gulfstream. I think that's a real building block, and she's the improving 4-year-old in this group that I think you have to continue to take a look at. Mitchell Road is another one. She's 4 years old. She's had a couple starts so far this year. Her lifetime record speaks for itself. She's 4 for 6 lifetime, and she comes out of the fairgrounds. So sometimes I find, and this is just a personal opinion, I don't know that those numbers always transfer elsewhere, but I do see that in this circumstance for this victory right here, she ran a 7 against the optional claimers. In this circumstance, she ran an 8. And here we are in the stakes race on February 16th. She ran a 4. She took a very big step forward, and I'll take you back to Thoroughgraph for a second and just show you that curve. So you see, here we are back in her 3-year-old season, very steady, very consistent. This is a good pattern for her. As we've come in to the end of 2018 and into her 4-year-old season, you're seeing this upward trajectory where she is continuing to improve. So I think you can project, and it's safe to say, that she might run one of her better races come Saturday. And if she improves off that 4, everybody in this field is really going to have their running shoes on to compete with her. So she is a win candidate for me. I'll jump ahead just sort of in the interest of time because we have a lot of races to get through here to Viva Vegas. Viva Vegas was 3rd last time out. Now they went very, very slow early on, and she did not have any pace to run at that day. But I did want to take a look at that race, and here we'll go back to stats. So we're still into race number 9. I'm going to go back to the PPs, and I'm going to jump ahead because we're on race number 10. We've moved ahead. Now I'll scroll down to Viva Vegas. So she is the number 8 on Saturday. So we'll pull her up, and then we'll go to this most recent race. And this little kind of video icon there, that's where you can go ahead and play a race replay. So we'll take a look at her. What I worry about with her, and just kind of talking about her past performances while this comes up, and she's the 1 in here. So she's going to be the gray that breaks from the inside post. She has not won in a very long time, but she's also one of those that seems to try really hard, and she's been running into some tough competition. You see Rimska in her past performances, lots of graded stakes races, Hawksmoor in there. Alicia's World is a horse that also from the Chad Brown barn formerly, and here she is again. She's the gray, kind of tucked in along the inside there. She'll get a nice trip, sort of off the pace, albeit off a very slow pace. Robbie Alvarado was aboard that day. Jose Ortiz is going to be aboard on Saturday, and I think the Ortiz brothers, it's safe to say they are 2 riders that really make a difference, and they ride the turf course very well. And so I think if he is on a horse with the ability, you can trust him to give her kind of the best trip possible. So she'll sit, again, that nice kind of tactical trip along the inside. And what you're going to see when they turn for home is that she's just really going to be very tenacious. She'll have to wait a little bit. She'll have a little bit of trouble. She's only going to be defeated a neck across the wire. And she's a horse that, doesn't really have to take her course with her either. She's competed well at Laurel. She's competed well at Tampa. So here she is. He's going to try to find a seam in between horses there. No luck. Now it looks like horses are going to split, and he'll have another chance. Again, the door shuts. No luck as that rider with the red cap comes over. Here, finally, he sees a little bit of daylight, but he's almost too late because this horse has kind of gotten the jump on him. But I give this mare a lot of credit for this effort because she battles back along the inside, and I think had she had any pace to run at and just an ability to kind of kick through that spot a little sooner, she could have been a win candidate off that race. So she's one of them that I really like in here. So just to summarize this race, I'll go back to DRS. She is going to be my second choice, the 8, Viva Vegas. I am going to put the 4, and that is Mitchell Road, on top because, again, I do think with that improving pattern, she's just continuing to get better. And then I'll give a look also to the 2 in flexibility off the credit and the performance of the horses that she's been running against. And if you're playing a bigger ticket, we kind of talked a little bit about I'm So Fancy and if she's ready off the break. Gary, any horses that I missed that you wanted to touch on?
No, I mean, Mitchell Road has everything you want. Joel Rosario on board, Bill Mott, who's always patient. That seems like the top horse in the race. Again, going with my 4-year-old angle, I really like the 3. It was one of the better 3-year-old grass horses last year, coming back, started off real well in her first start. Graham Motion, and you're going to get some odds here to help yourself out. If she improves in any way, she competes with these.
Yeah, and I think you look through, I mean, she's only a length off Rushing Fall in the Appalachian, and that was over a yielding turf course. So she's definitely one of those, you're playing some bigger tickets. If you want to include, as many as you can. This is a more evenly matched race. I didn't see a ton of speed in here aside from Mitchell Road. So that was part of the reason that, I ended up leaning towards her. I think that she has the ability to control this race on the front end. if Rosario wants to be aggressive with her. So that was another reason that I kind of came back to her a little bit. We'll jump forward to the Chick Lang. That will go as race number 11 on the card on Saturday. This is always a fun race. 3-year-olds, these are the horses that are sprinting. So maybe, you had some bigger Derby Preakness type dreams along the way, but we get to this portion of the year and I think connections get really honest about what a horse is going to be best at. And that's when you see some of these horses kind of turn back in distance. You can see that a little bit with Still Dreaming. The good win at the mile at Laurel, and bear in mind that is a 1-turn mile right there. Then they try the Sam Davis around 2 turns, maybe looking to get some Derby points. Disappointing race that day, ends up 7th in the field of 9. Then they go to the Private Terms, which is a race that helps you qualify for the Preakness. And actually, Always Mining will be one of the horses in the Preakness. Again, 5th place finish. Just doesn't quite seem like he wants to go quite that far. And so they turn back. You get a victory at 7 furlongs. And now here we are at 6 furlongs. Malpais is an interesting horse to me. A horse with some kind of flashy running lines as of late, back-to-back victories. I'll tell you, as far as Thoroughgraph goes, these are both 4s that he earned. But also bear in mind that at Charlestown, that 7 furlong race is a 2-turn race. I do want to go back and look at it, though, and we'll just look at sort of the early stages of that race. So I'm going to come back to stats. We'll jump ahead to race number 11. We'll go ahead to the 3. This is Malpais. Just kind of a marker for you, too. You see where that blue dot is? That shows you that that's a key race. And this is something that is very easy for me because you don't really have to do a lot of the chart work yourself anymore. It kind of cuts down on time quite a bit. And that is just an optional claiming race, and it was a short field, but you can see 3 of the 4, have come back to win. So that's one of those little shortcuts that I think stats provides for you, even if it's not something that you look at all the time. I'm just going to show you kind of the earlier portions of this race. We're not going to watch the whole thing because, again, it is a 2-turn race, but he is going to be along the inside here, Malpais, and he breaks so fast. And I think that's important. It's important to note for this weekend because he's just like a shot right out of there and puts a couple of lengths on this field so easily. He's also a horse that has a quite high knee action. You can see that as he goes by the first time, and he's so strong and in the bridle here. He's a son of Hardspun, and I think Joe Sharp has an interesting horse just because he might have a future and be a little bit more versatile as far as some turf races go as well. So I just wanted to show you that because, again, he is so fast early on, that horse. So we'll go back to the racing form. Admiral Lynch is a horse that comes out of that same race. So I'm pretty confident watching that Malpais is the better horse and can get the better of him again this weekend. Gladiator King off back-to-back wins. He was your winner of the Hutchison, kind of a flashy victory that day, and then they wheeled him back pretty quickly into that race off of the Fountain of Youth. Then you have 2 more horses here in Pyron and Preamble that, again, look very attractive on paper. This horse is 2 for 2. This horse is 3 for 3. You have Steve Atherton. You have Rudy Brissett, who pre-trains a lot for Windstar. He actually pre-trained Justify before Justify went on to Bob Baffert's farm. They do let him keep quite a few horses. And so, this is one of them that he has been able to hold on to. And he also has a beautiful pedigree. I love Spitestown. Anytime you're sprinting, routing, turf, dirt, he's just high percentage all over the place. And Beautician was a stakes winner herself. I'll actually take a look at that for you just to show you on stats. So he is the 8-horse Preamble. And if you go and just select Spitestown, they'll give you kind of a pre-populated statistic if that is what you're interested in. And then you can also, so here it is, the offspring of Spitestown in dirt sprints. You can see they win 19% of the time. They are in the money 50% of the time. But if I wanted to look at this in a different light, I can go ahead and hit modify. And to make it more specific to this race, we're talking about 3-year-olds. So I'll go ahead and scroll ahead here to the age. Let's just go to straight 3-year-olds and take a look at the stat. We'll apply that. It's going to run the data again. And this is running data over the last 5 years. And you saw all of those different subcategories. You can become as specific as you want on Stats Race Lens. And that was sort of the point I was making at the beginning, in that it's just so sophisticated. You can take this program as far as your ideas want, and it will produce that result for you. We should have it up here in just a second. There we go. So here we are, dirt sprint, 3-year-olds only. It's only a percentage faster, but here's just something that's interesting. Here we are at 20%. You can also go ahead and sort it by the finish if you'd like, and you want to look at all of the winners. Where do they come from? Where are they running? You're looking at Gulfstream. You're looking at Keeneland, a lot of Keeneland races, the Aqueduct, Fairgrounds, Woodbine. These are some strong circuits that these horses are competing on. We'll go back to the dam. I mentioned her, Beautician, just to show you again. This is right there. If you want to learn about her, here's her past performances. It pulls it up for you just so quickly, and you can pull in for me on TVG, to be able to show that data that fast is really, really important and really helps me quite a bit. I'll also tell you, as far as Thorograph goes, Preamble is a standout. He ran a 1 in each of those races. Pyron ran a 3 on this day, a 4 on that occasion, and nobody else really comes close. So Gary, for me, when it comes to this race, Preamble really is a standout. I love everything about him. He's perfect. He's undefeated. He has the pedigree. He won a good race at Keeneland against those optional $100,000 horses. He runs second off the break, and I don't really see any flaws in his game. I see some very good horses taking him on, but he's going to be the horse that I kind of build the ticket around. He's my single in this sequence coming up on Saturday.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, if there was a single anywhere, it would seem to be here and with that 8, and you're right, and also with the early speed and a lot of it, and this horse probably going to sit right behind it, give him another advantage there.
Yeah, there's a lot to like about him. If you beat him in the sequence, it really does separate your ticket. For me, I didn't see that, and he seems like the most logical horse to kind of cut it down with, and that's where I will end up. So we have 2 more races to go. The Dixie is up next, the mile and 16th. We're back on the turf course, $250,000 for 3-year-olds and up. 24/7 from the inside will be a horse that's rallying from off the pace, horse that's taking on some tougher competition. He's kind of dipped his toe into the deep end in the past. You can see he ran in the Arlington Million before going to the sidelines. He was 7th behind Robert Bruce on that occasion. Just Howard is a horse that they're going to take the blinkers off for Graham Motion. He competed against a couple of these recently. He's going to have to try to turn the tables on those. The first horse that I'm really intrigued by is Admission Office, the 3. He's a homebred for the Emmermans, as you can see, and what a beautiful turf pedigree. You have a son of Point of Entry, he himself a son of Dynafarmer out of a Royal Academy mare, and I want to go back and look at this last race. It was against Non-2 Company at Keeneland, so we'll jump back to stats. We're going to go ahead to race number 12, where we are right now. He is the number 3 horse, Admission Office, so we'll skip ahead to him. Scroll down here, go ahead and hit play, and we'll keep an eye on this horse. So he breaks from the outside. He's post 11 of 12 in this group, and he's a little bit green, which I think is kind of funny to say because he's already run 5 times, but you're going to see it in the late stages of the race. That's him right there with sort of the white blaze in the Emmerman silk. Comes away here in good order. You can see Rosario wants to try and tuck in because he knows he has that outside post. He's going to try to save a little ground if he can. He does have a spot right there to kind of slide in around the turn. And he didn't really have a whole lot of pace to run at on this occasion. And they're going to go 24, 48 and 3. They kind of continue to slow it down, 113 and 2. And he's still way back here, far back off of that pace. Actually, he's moving up. I jumped the gun there. So that was one of the things about the race that I found kind of interesting is that while he was, in the second flight going into the turn, kind of in the blink of an eye down the backstretch, he made that move and goes ahead and kind of puts himself into the race. Now here again, as they start to turn for home, he's going to make another pretty strong move and kind of a decisive one at that, just to put himself back into the race again. Right there, Rosario goes ahead and says, okay, we've got to kind of make up some ground here because we are going slow. These horses on the front end are not going to come back to me. And I thought that was a lot to ask, especially for a horse that was running off the layoff. He hadn't been in action since September of last year. He sort of has made 2 moves already to this point, and now we turn for home and we see what he has left. Now he's going to kind of shy out and veer out in a second here. You can see right there, kind of jump away from the stick, ends up squaring up and straightening out. And Kurt Becker in the call, I don't think, gave him much of a chance. This is Instilled Regard that's in front of him there, and he just gets his nose down on the wire. I thought that was one of the more impressive replays of all of the races that I watched, coming into this weekend. He is a horse that I am blown away by, and there's your improving 4-year-old angle one more time, Gary, because he ran for the first time at 4 last time out. We'll kind of skip ahead here. The Australian horse, I'm not sure if he has the class to compete against these horses that have at it. Is off a long layoff for Christophe Clement. He kept very good company and looked like he was sort of coming into himself at that point. He has the back class, but I think with the recency of some of the others in here, he's a horse that I'm going to have to leave alone for the day. And then just going down towards the bottom where we get some of the real kind of heavy hitters in this group. Inspector Lynley is a horse that is 4 for 11 at the distance. 4 of his 6 wins have come at this distance. And you look at this year, he's run 3 times in 2019. The only horse to defeat him, Bricks and Mortar, and he was your winner of the inaugural Pegasus World Cup turf. So I think that goes a very, very long way. He ran 3s consistently through all 4 of these races. He's one of the more consistent horses in the group, and if you wanted to go ahead and pick him on top, I couldn't argue with that. Admission Office, the horse we just showed the replay on, he ran a 4 in that last allowance race that we showed you from Keeneland. And then to the outside, one of my favorite horses that is just in training. I am so excited to see this horse come back, and that's Catholic Boy. Grade 1 winner on both the turf and the dirt. I'll show you just a second of the Belmont Derby. We won't go through the whole race, but this is part of what I love about this horse is just how tenacious he is. And he looks like he's training pretty well too. A couple of bullet works for him coming into the race. We'll go back here to the Belmont Derby. And bear in mind, he's going to pass Analyze It, who was one of those horses that was just so highly regarded into last year. I'll skip ahead and we'll see if it can kind of catch up with us here. I just want to show you as they turn for home. So Catholic Boy is on the lead, and he was able to dictate his own pace clear throughout this race, and he was pretty comfortable up there. But as soon as Analyze It and the others made a run at him, you can see here's Catholic Boy here, here's Analyze It to the outside. He is passed in this race right there. Analyze It goes right on by, and you think he's going to sail on to victory. And watch Catholic Boy to the inside. He just does not give up. Now, there was an argument that maybe Analyze It hangs a little bit in some of his races, but I just thought there was a lot of class shown from the Son of More Than Ready in that race. So he is a horse that I love. I'm so excited to see him back. I think he has a bright future as a 4-year-old. He's already, as you say, a multiple Grade 1 winner. He is definitely the class of the field. But Gary, for me, I'm just going to take a little bit of a swing because he is off that break. And I love what I saw from Admission Office. I'm going to put Admission Office on top in this field. I think he's 12-1 on the morning line. But Catholic Boy, I cannot say it enough. You have to use him on any ticket. He is 100% the class of that group.
I'm right there with you, Christina. I mean, it's the 3 is normally a horse that I would just jump all over. But here with the Inspector Lynley and Catholic Boy, it's almost, you can make the argument that even if Admission Office runs the race of his life, he's still going to lose by a length or 2 to those monsters on the outside of him. So it's a tough race for me, but it would be tough for me not to use 11 and 12 on a ticket along with 3 and maybe even again with that 4-year-old angle to 5 here with your Ortiz brother on.
Yeah, yep, that's what I had on the ticket was 3, 11, 12 to use those outside few. So now we're coming up to the Preakness, and this will be the last race that we kind of go over here. And again, feel free to send any questions that you have via Twitter. If you have anything that you want to touch on with Gary and send him an email on any added questions, I'm happy to chime in and happy to send along some of this data to send, if you want to see the Thorograph sheets, if you want to see Stats Race Lens just a little bit more, happy to go ahead and pass that along. So for the Preakness, War of Will, his bad luck, he dropped the rail again out of the Kentucky Derby. Obviously, the conversation has been quite a bit focused around him and around his moves on the turn and whether he caused that trouble or whether it was done to him. I just want to see him run well. I want to see him go out there and show everybody that he is the horse that we thought he was back here in the Lecomte and the Risen Star. Bergen War is a horse that I've always been very intrigued by. He got a lot of flack for his second place effort in the Fountain of Youth because it did really set up for him. He had a ton of speed to run at. He closed into that. He ended up second. And then we haven't seen him since the Florida Derby. I just think that he has a little bit more to give. And if you have the time to look up My Conquistador, and again, that's right there on Stats for you too, They put the blinkers on, beautiful pedigree, a lot of ability, big, long, striding son of Tappet. He's a horse that I really give a big chance to. Improbable was my pick in the Kentucky Derby. I was a little disappointed in his effort because even though it was a sloppy track, I still felt like he had the opportunity to make some moves here and there, and he just didn't really capitalize on it. And he did run well in the slop in the Arkansas Derby. Remember, Omaha Beach was the Richard Mandela horse that scratched the Wednesday before the Kentucky Derby. I think if you go back and look at that race in Arkansas, Improbable actually ran a better race to my eye, just because he was shuffled back. They moved a little early. He ended up taking all the mud, all the kickback, and he still ran on and was only defeated a length in the end. Same, I thought, could be said in the Rebel. In each of these occasions, Drain Van Dyke and Jose Ortiz, they were chasing Mike Smith. Mike Smith was on another horse in those races. He made kind of an early move to try and win the race for himself, and with Omaha Beach, it worked out. These two riders kind of followed him on both of those occasions, and I think it was to Improbable's demise in each of them. And so with Mike Smith jumping aboard, this is an interesting combination. This is, clearly your big money rider and the horse that always had the ability, in my opinion, not only to win this race, but to also win the Preakness. Owen Dale is a horse that I think not a lot of people will give a chance to. He ran a 0 on Thorograph in the Lexington at that mile and a 16th distance. And just to give you a little bit more context, the Kentucky Derby was a 2 for Improbable. The Arkansas Derby was his best race. He ran a -1 into the negative territory. He ran a 1 in the Rebel, and then back up to War of Will as far as the numbers go. He ran a 3 in the Kentucky Derby, and in the Risen Star, 3 races back, he ran a 1. So I think Owen Dale is one of those that might be sort of peaking at the right time, and if you're looking for a horse that's a bit of a price, that he's going to be the one for me that I found a little bit intriguing. Don't sleep on Always Mining either. He is the local horse, and you can see those victories just rattling them off one after the other. He's 7 for 12 lifetime. And again, on Thorograph, he's run a 1 in these last 2 starts. We'll see if we have the first Maryland bred since, I think it was Deputed Testimony, to win the Preakness. And you get, Daniel Centeno, who's one of the best riders on that circuit, sticking aboard for Kelly Rubley. These are the local connections that really have that circuit kind of locked up. And then I'll just jump a little further down because we're short on time. Another Twist of Fate to the outside. He ran behind Owen Dale in the Lexington. He ran a 3 in that race. The Sunland Derby was the same, a 3 on that occasion. I think he's a horse that visually a lot of people have jumped on board with, but his better numbers have come on synthetic, and some of the other competition that he's facing back here, these aren't necessarily the horses that are going to be in the same conversation as War of Will, as Improbable. This race right here is the one to me that really kind of showed me his class, and Owen Dale was better on the square on that day. So if I'm looking for a price in here, for me, it is going to be Owen Dale. I would be hard-pressed not to root for Always Mining. We actually have a great feature story coming up on TVG in the next couple days. So Scott Hazelton and Gabby got a chance to really know the connections. They are there in Maryland, so there's a lot to learn about Always Mining, and we'll put that up on our social media channels. And then I'll go back to Improbable and to War of Will. Gary, I think I'm going to come back to my Derby horse in the Preakness, just because I think the combination of him and Mike Smith and the fact that Baffert is going to go ahead and run him back, it tells me quite a bit about their intentions and how they think that he is doing coming into this race. But the Preakness is going to be a race on all tickets that I'll have a lot of coverage. I'll use War of Will if you can, and you can throw in Bourbon War. I've seen a lot of spark from him, and I love his stride. Improbable, certainly. Owen Dale, another horse, and then Always Mining. I won't kind of give up on the local horse either, the son of Stay Thirsty, who we have out here in California now. Who do you like, Gary?
Yeah, I mean, those are all super nice horses. I've always found the Preakness, it's that, do you fault a horse that's coming off 2 weeks rest versus the ones that are fresh? I've always seen the Kentucky Derby horses that do stay in actually perform well 2 weeks later. So it's hard to fault Improbable. I was one of those in the minority that thought War of Will was likely going to win the Kentucky Derby if he wasn't slammed into. And so I'd like to see him rebound here if Cassie feels he's healthy enough to come back after 2 weeks rest. So I think he's the horse to beat here. I'm a little worried that the 3 may get loose on the lead and may be the only one out there. So I don't know that I would leave him off the ticket just in case in my head the 3 does go out to a lone lead and it's tough to beat there. But otherwise, I'm a big 1 fan, and I hope he gets his redemption on Saturday.
We'll take a look at those. I mentioned those race shapes. I haven't checked this yet, but I'll jump ahead to the race shape for the Preakness. And so let's see. It was the 3. It was Warrior's Charge. So he's quick. It's looking like here Market King has the ability to keep him company. You can see him. He's on average going 23 flat in the early stages of his races, and you can clearly argue that he could go faster if they send him Bodie Express. I think part of that is just because they had to send him from the outside post in the Derby, but yeah, he's definitely up there and in the conversation, and he clearly on paper that's where he wants to be. He has one way of going, and I always like looking as we kind of showed you with Malpais, those horses that break on top, they really make their own luck with that ability to get away from the gate so cleanly.
Right. He's got a nice pattern too with the sheets going with it. Ran a 5-2 back and then followed it up with a 3. So moving in the right direction.
All right. Well, so let's see. As far as I'll just go up to see if I can get it to him for your. There he is. Yeah, he is. He's improving right here. He's certainly.
So, Christina, I know we're short on time, and I know you got to get going to get on air. Can we see what the ticket looks like? What you got?
Yeah.
Everybody?
So I am going to just pull up a Word document to type this up for you really fast. I have it on my notepad next to me, but full disclosure for everybody on the phone, the traffic and the rain in LA got the best of me. I ran into TVG with about 12 minutes to post here for our webinar. So for the Preakness Stakes, again, pick 5, and I'll blow this up for you in a second too. I went 6, 8, 9 in the first leg, 2, 4, 8 in the second leg. The 1 was that horse. I'm just going to put him right there in case. That was the inside runner to kind of not leave off if you have the budget. The 8 is Preamble. That is the single in the chip laying. And then we move ahead with Catholic Boy, Inspector Lynley, and Admission Office, I believe it was, in the turf race. And then ultimately, I did have to kind of cut it down. I'm going to go 1, 4, 5, and 7 in the Preakness. That makes that a $54 ticket. We'll blow this up just so everybody can see it here. And I will send this along to Gary along with just some general notes and kind of anything else that we might have talked about today.
That's a very concise and nice ticket with a couple of longer shots on there. Could pay very well.
Yeah, I think we got a 12-to-1 shot, right, at one point. And then, if you use this horse, obviously that does kind of go ahead and make it a little bit more expensive. There were some that you pointed out, Gary, too, that I think we can, think about. That was it. Have at it, the 5. He's in the Dixie right here. So if you wanted to consider him in that group, and then I think the horse that you mentioned on the lead in the Preakness, Gary, if anybody wants to use, that's Warrior's Charge. So if you have the 3, maybe a horse to consider in that one as well.
Well, Christina, thank you very, very much. This was extremely informative, not just with the handicapping tools that you use and showing us how you use them, but introducing us a little bit to RaceLens. Like I said at the beginning, it's an absolutely powerful tool that you can make your own and really does cut down on the time that you need to handicap. And I suggest everybody giving it a spin and maybe even signing up for it. Well, thank you, everybody.
I'll tell you one more thing,
thank
Gary,
you,
before we
Christina.
go. Oh, sorry, before I cut you off. I usually use the Bruno to Julia workout reports just for everybody to know, but they are not up in time for this morning. But this is just generally what they look like, and I find them, as far as the workout reports that I've used over the years, to be the most helpful. So I'll kind of include that and just send that along as well if anybody wants to look at that once it's available for Saturday.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Christina, and thank everybody for joining. And we hope to see many of you out at Santa Anita either this weekend or very soon.